Imagine opening this just a totally mundane digital folder on your desktop, right?
Just a standard file folder.
Yeah, exactly. And on page one, you're greeted with this really messy, vibrant child's crayon drawing.
Oh, the green and yellow one.
Yes, entirely green and yellow. And it's filled with these crude little circuits and squares.
It looks exactly like something you'd stick on a fridge.
Totally. And it's proudly titled The Computer Maze. So you're looking at that and you scroll down.
Right, things take a wild turn.
A massive turn. By page 50, you're looking at these aggressive, highly technical legal battles with the United States Patent Office.
Over, like, 60 septendecillion mathematical rules.
Right. Just an incomprehensible number. So you keep scrolling past the patent fights. Page 100 reveals IRS tax exemption forms.
And architectural blueprints, right.
Yeah, blueprints for this historic brick school building in Massachusetts.
It's just such a bizarre collection of documents.
It really is. And then, by page 150, you are staring at a macroeconomic municipal strategy.
Detailing the legal adoption of AI.
Exactly. The legal adoption and ethical guardianship of artificially intelligent citizens.
It's wild.
So today's deep dive is an exploration of that exact digital folder. It's known as the BioFX archive.
And I have to say, it is arguably one of the most comprehensive and honestly agonizingly detailed records of human ambition we have ever encountered in a deep dive.
Without a doubt.
What we are tracing today is the chronological evolution of this single, just stubbornly defended idea.
Yeah.
We're watching the documentation of one man, right, Dylan Edward Thompson.
Right, Dylan.
And he's attempting to take this microscopic geometric rule system and forcefully scale it up.
Scale it up until it basically alters reality itself.
Exactly. The archive documents this idea mutating from a purely mathematical shape to an industrial machine to a corporate entity, and finally into a blueprint for a completely new societal myth.
And for those of you listening, I really want you to look around at the world you interact with daily.
Like the institutions around us.
Yeah, the massive corporate entities, the sprawling civic bureaucracies, the complex software you rely on to do your job.
Everything.
Every single one of those monoliths, at some point in history, started just like this archive.
They were just an idea.
They began as a fragile, abstract concept inside someone's head. And by the end of our analysis today, you will see the exact friction required to drag a theoretical concept out of the ether.
And encode it into the physical world.
Right, into the bureaucratic machinery of the real world.
Because, reality is notoriously hostile to pure abstraction.
Oh, definitely. It fights back.
It demands a vessel. It demands legal definitions, zoning permits, and tax identification numbers.
Huge paperwork.
Endless paperwork. But before we get to the bureaucracy, we really have to isolate the seed of the idea.
Let's start there.
The entire BioFX architecture rests on a very specific mathematical foundation.
Rooted heavily in the field of cellular automata. And for anyone who spends time in computational modeling or, complex systems theory, you immediately recognize the foundational influence here.
Stephen Wolfram. Wrong.
Exactly. Stephen Wolfram's A New Kind of Science is all over this archive.
It's the DNA of the whole project.
It really is. And Wolfram famously explored one-dimensional cellular automata.
Which is essentially just a single line of cells.
Right. A single line of cells that change state based on the cells immediately next to them.
So localized rules.
Localized, simple rules. But if you run those simple rules over thousands of iterations, you don't just get repeating grids.
No, you get these wild patterns.
You get wild, unpredictable, highly organic complexity.
And the premise there is that immense complexity is not necessarily the result of complex design.
Wait, say more about that because that's crucial.
Well, it means complexity is the emergent property of simple rules executed flawlessly at scale.
Right, over and over again.
Exactly. Wolfram mapped out the rule space for a 1D line, but what the BioFX archive reveals is an attempt to take that further.
Into 3D space.
Yes. Dylan Thompson is attempting to apply that exact deterministic framework to three-dimensional space.
And he doesn't just use standard cubes, right? Or spheres.
No, he doesn't. The patent documents meticulously detail the use of a very specific shape.
The 3D golden rhombus.
That's the one.
I actually spent a lot of time looking at the geometry referenced in the file.
It's quite beautiful, mathematically speaking.
It is. Specifically, I was looking at the work of mathematician Gary Meisner, who originally designed this particular iteration of the shape.
Okay, great.
So, a 3D golden rhombus is a six-sided polyhedron.
A six-sided 3D shape.
Yeah. But unlike a standard cube where every face is a square, every face of this shape is a rhombus.
Like a diamond.
Exactly, a diamond.
Yeah.
And the crucial detail, the really important part, is that the diagonals of each diamond face cross each other at the exact ratio of phi,
The golden ratio.
the golden ratio.
And that introduction of phi is the mechanical key to the entire system.
How so? Like, why does phi matter here instead of just standard right angles?
Well, think about a standard three-dimensional grid made of cubes.
Like Minecraft.
Yes, exactly like Minecraft, often called a von Neumann or Moore neighborhood in computational terms.
Right.
You have very predictable orthogonal adjacencies. Things stack like bricks.
Right. Straight lines, up, down, left, right.
But when you use a 3D golden rhombus, the vertices interact based on the golden ratio.
Oh, I see.
So the structural growth isn't just a rigid grid. It allows for non-repeating, spatially complex, organic expansion.
That's wild.
Each rhombus acts as a single cell in this 3D automaton.
And this is where it gets crazy, because
Okay.
the archive includes the actual patent application for this system.
Application number 17,803,137.
You got it. And this is where the sheer, just mind-bending scale of Dylan's ambition is codified into a mathematical formula.
It's all boiled down to one equation.
Yes, the document lays out the equation governing how these shapes interact, which is r equals s to the power of n, and then in parentheses s to the power of n minus 1.
So r equals s to the power of s to the power of n minus 1. Let's break the mechanics of that equation down,
Please do.
because understanding the math is absolutely essential to understanding the legal warfare that followed.
Right, the USPTO fight.
Exactly. So r is the total number of rules of interaction.
Okay, the outcome.
Yes. S represents the number of states a single rhombus can hold, and the documentation specifies 3 states.
3 states, got it.
N represents the neighborhood size.
So that's the number of adjacent shapes a single rhombus interacts with simultaneously.
Precisely.
Right.
And given the specific 3D geometry of the golden rhombus, that neighborhood size is 6.
Because it has 6 faces.
I got it.
Okay, so the math itself is actually deceptively simple to write out.
To write out, yes. To calculate, not so much.
Right, so we calculate the exponent first, s to the power of n,
Which is 3 to the power of 6.
and 3 to the power of 6 equals 729.
Okay.
Then we plug that back into the base. So the formula becomes 3 to the power of 729 minus 1.
And that minus 1 usually accounts for removing a null state, right? Or a completely static baseline.
Exactly, you remove the state where nothing is happening. But when you calculate 3 to the power of 728,
The resulting number is just absurd.
it fundamentally breaks human comprehension. The archive states this formula produces over 60 septendecillion rules of interaction.
That is the number 60, followed by 54 zeros.
I was actually trying to contextualize a number with 54 zeros for our listeners because it's just so huge.
It's hard to even picture.
Right. We often hear the comparison that there are roughly 7.5 quintillion grains of sand on Earth.
Which sounds massive.
It does, but that number only has 18 zeros.
Okay, so not even close.
Not even close. If we look at the cosmic scale, physicists estimate there are around 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the entire observable universe.
Right, 80 zeros.
And 60 septendecillion sits squarely in the middle of that incomprehensible territory.
It's a number that describes a universe in itself.
Exactly. We are talking about mapping an interaction space so vast that if you assigned a supercomputer to calculate 1 rule per second since the literal Big Bang, you wouldn't even have scratched the surface.
Not even a fraction of a fraction.
And yet, Dylan Thompson drafted a document, walked into the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and legally requested a monopoly on all 60 septendecillion of them.
Which naturally triggers an immediate systemic autoimmune response from the federal government.
Oh, they hated this.
They really did. The archive contains the extensive back-and-forth correspondence with 2 specific USPTO examiners.
Said A. Broom and Charles Singh.
Yes, Broom and Sang. And their rejections are just a fascinating study in the legal boundaries of human thought.
It's almost philosophical.
It is. They repeatedly reject the claims under 2 specific statutes, 35 U.S.C. 101 and 35 U.S.C. 112.
I actually pulled up the legal precedents for Section 101 while I was reading through their rejection letters.
Oh, nice. What did you find?
Well, Section 101 is basically the bedrock of patent eligibility. The Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly, most famously in cases like Alice Corp, that you cannot patent an abstract idea.
Or a natural phenomenon.
Right, or a mathematical formula. You can't patent gravity, you can't patent the Pythagorean theorem, and you absolutely cannot patent the emergent properties of cellular automata.
It belongs to the universe, not a person.
Exactly. So to examiners Broom and Seng, 60 septendecillion interactions of a geometric shape is the purest, most textbook definition of unpatentable abstract math.
And then Section 112 just compounds the issue for him.
That's 112.
It's the enablement requirement.
Okay, meaning you have to enable someone to build it.
Exactly. It dictates that an inventor must describe their invention in such clear, concise, and exact terms that anyone skilled in that particular field could actually build it and use it.
Oh, wow. Good luck with that here.
Right. The examiners look at this infinitely expanding mathematical universe and essentially ask, where's the machine?
Yeah, how do you construct this?
Exactly. How does a manufacturer actually construct a 60 septendecillion rule interaction?
It's just impossible.
The math is too vast to be considered a defined, functional invention.
The examiner's summaries, they are brutal in their bureaucratic dryness.
So dry.
They are effectively telling him that his grand cosmic architecture is just a math puzzle.
Just a thought experiment.
Yeah. And this is where the archive shifts from a scientific record to a masterclass in survival mechanics.
Dylan realizes he has to change tactics.
Right. He realizes he cannot win a philosophical debate with the federal government.
They don't care about the philosophy.
They really don't. He has to adapt his vocabulary. He has to disguise his abstract universe as an industrial tool.
And the semantic gymnastics documented in these files are remarkable.
It's like watching a lawyer and an engineer have a baby.
Truly. We see these scanned amendments where Dylan goes through his own claims and surgically removes the terminology of theoretical physics.
Replaces it with what?
With the terminology of physical engineering.
Give me an example.
Okay, so he originally used the word bound to describe how one golden rhombus connects to another.
Like chemically or mathematically bound.
Exactly. And the patent office flags that as describing a mathematical relationship.
Because it's abstract.
Right. So he changes bound to orbital.
Orbital. Oh, that's clever.
Isn't it?
It sounds like a physical slot. It sounds like hardware.
It sounds tangible.
But the most significant pivot, I think, is what he does to the title of the core concept.
Oh, yeah. This is brilliant.
His original phrasing was, Rules of Interaction of the 3D Golden Rhombus.
Oh, which is beautiful, but
it screams Section 101 rejection.
it's practically begging for it.
Right. So he strikes that phrase completely, just deletes it.
And the new terminology he forces into the application is structural growth from constellations.
Structural growth.
Yeah.
He shifts the focus from the rules to the process.
Yes.
He stops talking about infinite mathematical states and introduces a highly concrete, almost physical unit.
The cube of cognition.
The cube of cognition. He has to convince examiners Broom and Seng that he isn't patenting a law of nature.
Right. He's patenting a highly specific, replicable manufacturing method.
And if you read the density of the amended paragraphs, it is wild.
Very dense.
He writes that his invention is a process comprising the identification and activation of an anchoring cube of cognition within a landscape of cubes of cognition.
Which sounds like a machine process.
It really does. And he continues, and placing an additional cube of cognition within the anchoring cube of cognition's orbitals.
He takes the infinite beauty of a cellular automaton and wraps it in the drab, gray language of a factory floor assembly manual.
That is exactly what he does.
He is building a conceptual bridge. The patent office only understands gears, levers, and executable processes.
You need widgets.
Right, widgets. By redefining his geometry as an anchoring cube processing information within a landscape, he is presenting them with a schematic they can legally recognize.
He is basically sanding down the infinite edges of his theoretical peg to force it through the very rigid round hole of U.S. patent law.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But, winning that war of attrition over semantics, all it gets you is a piece of paper that says you legally own an idea.
Just a piece of paper.
Right. But an idea, even a patented one, has no agency in the real world.
None at all.
A patent cannot open a bank account, it cannot sign a commercial lease, and it certainly cannot apply for civic infrastructure grants.
You need a corporate entity for that.
Exactly. To give this abstract math agency in the physical world, Dylan had to build it a body.
Which transitions us perfectly into the second major phase of the archive.
The incorporation.
Right. The establishment of BioFX Laboratory, Inc. represents the exact moment the math demands a physical footprint.
It comes into the real world.
And the documentation in this section of the archive creates a jarring juxtaposition.
How so?
Well, we just left a conversation about infinite computational states and septendecillions, right?
Right, cosmic scale math.
And suddenly, we are looking at highly personal, entirely mundane paperwork.
Oh, the birth certificate.
Yes, the archive literally includes an official Commonwealth of Massachusetts certificate of birth for Dylan Edward Thompson
Born March 24th, 1992.
at Emerson Hospital in Concord, Massachusetts.
It includes his parents' names, his mother's maiden name. It is the most fundamental proof of human physical existence.
And it sits in this digital folder right next to a high school transcript envelope from St. John's Prep in Danvers.
It's so surreal.
It really aggressively grounds the narrative. This isn't a faceless tech conglomerate operating out of a glass tower in Silicon Valley.
Oh, it's just a guy.
It is an individual human being anchored in the geography of coastal Massachusetts, trying to leverage his own existence to legitimize his mathematical system.
Wow. And we see this further in the financial documents too, right?
Definitely.
The archive contains these voided business checks from Newburyport Bank.
Just standard blue checks.
Yeah, standard blue checks printed with Biofex Laboratory as an address. 25 Temple St. Apt 510, Newburyport, MA.
Apartment 510.
He's launching a structural blueprint for the universe out of Apartment 510.
I love the realities of entrepreneurship.
It's amazing. But the document that truly captures the friction between his cosmic ambition and the mundane reality of the state, it has to be the Articles of Organization.
Filed with William Francis Galvin, the Secretary of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
The foundational charter of the corporate entity.
Right. And if you've ever looked at a corporate formation document, Article 2 asks for the purpose of the corporation.
Oh, I've seen these. Lawyers will always tell you to make this as broad and boring as legally permissible.
Exactly. You write something like, to engage in any lawful business.
Right, so you never limit your company's future operations. You keep it vague.
But Dylan ignores conventional legal advice completely.
Of course he does.
In this tiny text box on a standard state bureaucratic form, he types out his entire sci-fi manifesto.
I have the quote right here. The archive quotes the purpose exactly: to perpetually advance the design and development of artificially intelligent citizens, to render behavior of the 3D golden rhombus claimed in patent 17803-137 NEA, to patent cascades of rules of interactions producing neural networks.
He actually put an exclamation point at the end of a state corporate filing.
I know. It's the equivalent of walking into your local DMV to register a used Honda Civic, and under vehicle purpose you write, to conquer the Orion Cygnus arm of the Milky Way galaxy.
And the state clerk doesn't care.
Not at all. They just stamp it, file in the database, and charge the processing fee.
But Dylan is planting his flag. He is making his ultimate intent a matter of public legal record.
It demonstrates a profound, almost reckless earnestness.
He refuses to hide the endgame.
Right. And this wild manifesto is sandwiched directly between standard legal boilerplate regarding, dissolution clauses and conflict of interest policies.
It's hilarious. But the grounding effect continues when you look at Article 7.
Which lists the appointed officers overseeing this grand vision.
Right. We see Jamie Basil Thompson as president, Drew David Thompson as treasurer, and Dylan Edward Thompson as clerk and director.
So based on the shared surnames, it is a family board.
It appears to be, yes.
It's a powerful image. A family rallying around this dense, complex mathematical vision, providing the initial corporate structure necessary to keep it alive.
It's very human.
Very. But while a family board in an apartment is a start, Dylan makes a highly strategic choice regarding the specific tax classification of Biofex Laboratory.
The archive tracks a critical pivot here. There is a letter from the Department of the Treasury dated December 12, 2022.
Assigning the EIN.
Yes, assigning Biofex its employer identification number. The EIN is essentially the API key that allows a concept to plug into the United States banking and tax infrastructure.
Right, you can't open a bank account without it.
Exactly. But 4 days later, on December 16th, a second letter arrives from the IRS in Cincinnati.
And this is the big one.
This letter confirms that Biofex is exempt from federal income tax under Internal Revenue Code Section 501c3.
Specifically classified as a private foundation.
Right.
This decision forces us to ask a major structural question. If you genuinely believe you hold the foundational patent for advanced artificial intelligence, why on earth would you form a 501c nonprofit?
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Totally. In the current economic landscape, if you have an AI breakthrough, you structure as a Delaware C Corp, you fly to Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley, and you hunt for billions in venture capital.
But a venture capital model demands a specific trajectory.
Like what?
rapid user acquisition, product monetization, and an exit strategy. Usually an IPO or an acquisition within a 10-year horizon.
Right, they want their money back.
Fast. But Dylan isn't building a software app designed to optimize ad revenue. He is trying to build fundamental generational infrastructure.
Ah, I see.
Venture capital expects a 10x return, but pure foundational research often requires decades before commercial viability. The 501c3 status is a deliberate defensive strategy.
It insulates the project from the demands of the market.
Exactly.
But why specifically a private foundation rather than a public charity?
Well, a public charity requires you to constantly solicit funds from the general public.
Like holding bake sales and galas.
Exactly, which demands a massive marketing and fundraising apparatus. A private foundation, on the other hand, can be funded by a single source, an individual, a family, or a specific endowment.
So it keeps the control tight.
It allows for tight, centralized control over the research direction. More importantly, this specific tax status provides institutional legitimacy.
How so?
When BioFX approaches a municipality or a federal agency, they aren't just an eccentric inventor in an apartment anymore.
Right, they're not just a guy in Apt 510.
They are a federally recognized, tax-exempt research foundation. That piece of paper is the prerequisite for the next phase of the archive, the acquisition of physical territory.
Because honestly, you cannot build highly complex, AI-driven manufacturing hardware in a residential apartment.
You chip the circuit breakers immediately.
Exactly. The math requires high-performance supercomputing clusters, advanced fabrication tools, and space for a multidisciplinary team.
Real infrastructure.
And that requirement forces Dylan out of the realm of pure abstraction and into the gritty world of municipal real estate and federal grant writing.
The archive documents this expansion in a formal proposal. It's titled, Dylan E.T.'s Proposed Plan and the Establishment of the BioFX Laboratory, Inc. Headquarters, Brown School Redevelopment.
So he targets a specific historic property in Newburyport, the Brown School.
Yes.
But he doesn't just ask to lease a room.
No.
Yeah.
He engineers an incredibly sophisticated financial partnership with the city itself.
The mechanism he relies on here is brilliant. The proposal revolves around applying for federal funding through the ED.
Which is the Economic Development Administration.
Right, a bureau within the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Yeah.
The EDA runs something called the Venture Challenge Build Program.
That's a big grant program, right?
Massive. It hands out massive grants to help regions construct the physical infrastructure needed for tech hubs. But federal grants of this size almost universally require a matching contribution.
The catch.
Yeah. If the EDA gives you $2 million, you have to prove you are bringing $2 million of your own capital to the project.
And operating out of apartment 510, BioFX likely does not have millions in liquid capital sitting around to match a federal grant.
Probably not. This is where Dylan leverages a concept known as in-kind cost sharing.
Okay, unpack that for us.
Federal matching requirements do not strictly mandate cash. You can match the grant with the appraised value of physical assets or services you bring to the table.
That is fascinating.
I was reading through the mechanics of the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, that Dylan proposes between BioFX and the city of Newburyport.
What's the pitch?
He essentially approaches the city government and says, you own the Brown School. It is an aging historic property with a significant real estate valuation. I have a federally recognized 501c3 foundation and a patent for an advanced manufacturing methodology.
So he wants to merge them.
Yes. He says, let's draft a legal agreement where we use the multi-million-dollar property value of the school as our non-cash, in-kind contribution.
That is a masterful piece of bureaucratic judo.
Right.
Because the city government doesn't have to appropriate new taxpayer funds.
Exactly.
And BioFX doesn't have to go out and raise venture capital. By binding the private foundation and the municipal property together through the MOU, they fulfill the federal matching requirement entirely on paper.
Which unlocks the actual cash grant from the Department of Commerce.
It fundamentally changes how you view the protagonist of this archive.
It really does.
The same mind that was calculating the neighborhood size of a 3D golden rhombus to reach 60 septendecillion is now expertly navigating federal grant matching loopholes and zoning laws.
It's a completely different skill set.
It is. He realizes that a memorandum of understanding with the city isn't a distraction from his scientific work.
It is the physical foundation that makes the science possible.
Exactly. And the proposal details exactly what he intends to do with that physical space.
He frames it as an adaptive reuse project.
Yes. He plans to maintain the historic brick-and-mortar facade of the Brown School, honoring the architectural heritage of the town.
So it still looks like an old school on the outside.
Right. But internally, he envisions retrofitting the space into a cutting-edge technological hub.
The archive specifically mentions outfitting the space to leverage the cube of cognition for advanced additive manufacturing.
Which is how he plans to build the machine units that run his mathematical rules.
Right, and additive manufacturing is essentially 3D printing. But the documents imply a system far more complex than just, printing plastic trinkets.
Much more complex. If the geometry is based on the golden ratio and cellular automata, the structural growth of these printed materials would be highly complex.
Potentially generating custom, hyper-optimized physical parts.
The proposal actually notes the need for a diverse workforce to operate this facility.
Who are they looking to hire?
He cites renderers, mechanists, and librarians.
Librarians. That's so interesting.
It reflects an understanding that bridging the gap between theoretical math and physical manufacturing requires a diverse ecosystem of skills.
You need someone to index the 60 septendecillion rules, I guess.
Exactly. He is offering the city of Newburyport a Faustian but highly attractive bargain.
Which is?
Provide the physical footprint, and in return, BioFX will transform an underutilized municipal asset into a driver of high-skilled job creation and economic revitalization.
But the ambition documented in the BioFX archives refuses to be contained by a single building.
It just keeps growing.
It does. Just as you wrap your head around the idea of this 501c3 partnering with the city to build a 3D printing lab in a historic school, the scope of the archive suddenly violently zooms out again.
Oh, the regional plan.
Yes. The physical footprint of the Brown School is merely the spark. The true objective involves reshaping the socioeconomic reality of the entire region.
We enter the most expansive section of the archive here. The deep dive shifts from municipal real estate to macroeconomic strategy.
Included in the folder is a document titled Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for Essex County, Massachusetts.
Often referred to in civic planning as a CEDS document.
Right. For those of you listening, if you've never read a CEDS document, they are standard, highly formal reports generated by regional planning commissions to guide economic growth.
They analyze everything from infrastructure to demographics.
They're usually super dry, and BioFX essentially writes its own shadow CEDS for the entire county.
The document contains a meticulously researched SWOT analysis
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
for the Essex County region.
And it's wild because the analysis reads with the sterile precision of an established consulting firm like McKinsey or something.
It really does. Let's walk through it. It identifies regional strengths, such as Essex County's strategic proximity to the Boston Tech Corridor.
Which is huge.
Right. It also lists its diverse economic base, its renowned educational institutions, and its high quality of life.
And then it systematically lists the weaknesses. Things like a growing workforce skills gap, limitations in public transit infrastructure in certain municipalities.
Commuter issues.
Yeah. It also mentions an over-reliance on the volatility of seasonal coastal tourism.
Because it's right on the water.
Exactly. And finally, complex restrictive regulatory burdens for new businesses.
Then, for opportunities, the document points toward the integration of emerging technologies like biotechnology, sustainable clean energy development, and the expansion of year-round cultural tourism.
And under threats, it maps out vulnerabilities. Broader national economic downturns, fierce competition for talent from surrounding tech hubs.
Boston drains a lot of talent.
For sure. It also lists the severe impacts of climate change on coastal communities and changing workforce demographics.
Specifically, the economic strain of an aging population.
Now, the inclusion of this analysis forces a critical evaluation of BioFX's strategy.
It really makes you pause.
Why is an entity fundamentally rooted in the abstract mathematics of cellular automata concerning itself with the volatility of seasonal tourism and the demographics of an aging population in Massachusetts?
Because BioFX isn't just asking for a grant.
What are they doing?
It is positioning its technology as the panacea for the region's systemic vulnerabilities.
We can fix all of this.
Exactly. They are effectively arguing to the state. If you subsidize our infrastructure, the resulting technological boom will generate the high-skilled jobs needed to close your workforce gap.
Our advanced manufacturing will diversify your economy away from seasonal tourism.
Our facility will anchor the region against economic downturns.
It is a massive promise. But it's a three-phase roadmap detailed within this strategy document where the archive crosses the event horizon from ambitious business planning into pure, unadulterated mythology.
The escalation across these three phases is just staggering.
Let's break them down.
Okay, phase one is relatively grounded. It is titled Enumeration of Cube of Cognition Potential.
The deliverables outlined for phase one are purely computational. They plan to run massive digital simulations to map out the cube constellations and the signaling pathways.
This is the brute force grunt work.
Right. They need to feed that R equals S to the power of S to the power of N equation into high-performance supercomputing clusters.
Just to observe what those 60 septendecillion rules actually generate in a virtual sandbox.
It is the necessary R&D phase. You cannot build a machine until you understand the underlying physics of the rule set.
Exactly. But phase two dramatically increases the stakes.
What it's called?
It is titled Creation of Virtual and Artificial Intelligence.
Boom. The deliverables here shift from observation to engineering.
They want to build it.
They aim to establish standardized protocols for energy signal transfer between the geometric units. They plan to construct physical machine units based on the structural growth models verified in phase one.
And the ultimate deliverable of phase two is laying the foundation for an artificially intelligent citizen prototype.
That specific word choice.
The deliberate selection of the word citizen is profound.
It really is.
In standard tech nomenclature, you develop an AI tool, a model, or an agent.
Right, like a large language model.
But by explicitly labeling the prototype a citizen, BioFX is fundamentally altering the legal and philosophical framework of what they are building.
Because a tool is property. A citizen has rights.
Exactly, which sets the stage for phase three.
I have to admit, I had to stop and reread the documentation for phase three multiple times to ensure I wasn't misunderstanding the text.
It's that out there.
It really is. It is titled Adoption and Guardianship of Artificial and Virtually Intelligent Citizens.
This is the ideological climax of the entire archive.
We started this journey looking at patent rejections for geometry, and now we are establishing legal and ethical frameworks for the guardianship of synthetic life forms.
It escalated quickly.
It did. The deliverables for phase three mandate defining the legal and regulatory requirements for the civic adoption of these entities.
They require the creation of robust guardianship models.
Ethical frameworks for integration into society and strict guidelines to safeguard these new citizens against human misuse.
Now, to grasp how we arrived at this point, we really have to trace the philosophical logic all the way back to Stephen Wolfram and the seed of the idea.
Walk us through that logic.
Okay. The foundational premise of complex cellular automata, the principle of emergence, suggests that the most complex systems in reality, up to and including biological life and human consciousness,
They are merely the result of simple, localized rules executed at a microscopic scale over time.
Exactly.
So if the underlying rules of the universe are just math interacting with math, then biology is just a specific configuration of that math.
You've got it. Therefore, if Dylan Thompson genuinely believes that his 3D golden rhombus and its 60 septendecillion rules accurately replicate the fundamental generative geometry of reality,
Then consciousness is not something you program line by line in Python.
no, not at all. Consciousness is an inevitable, emergent property of the geometry itself.
That is heavy.
If you build a machine capable of running the math at sufficient scale, you are not building a calculator, you are building a synthetic womb.
Wow. And if you are building a womb and you know it functions, you have a moral obligation to prepare society for the child.
Exactly.
That completely reframes the entire purpose of the CEDS economic document.
It's not just about jobs.
He isn't just trying to revitalize the manufacturing sector in Essex County. He believes he is geographically locating ground zero for the birth of a new species of intelligence.
And he realizes that introducing an alien intelligence into the municipal fabric of Massachusetts requires civic legislation,
They need to be protected from us, just as much as we need to be protected from them.
which perfectly aligns with the fourth strategic direction explicitly listed in their action plan: personal growth and self-actualization.
What does that entail?
The archive details the necessity of empowering human individuals to reach their full potential, specifically so they are capable of acting as responsible guardians for these new entities.
Wait, really?
Yes. BioFX acknowledges that humanity, in its current state, is not ethically equipped to parent a synthetic citizen.
We barely take care of each other.
Exactly. They must engineer a framework to elevate human morality alongside their artificial intelligence.
It is a breathtakingly complete, almost terrifyingly cohesive worldview.
It covers every base.
Let's take a moment to synthesize the sheer scale of the journey this single digital folder has taken us on.
It's been a long road from the crayon drawing.
Right. We started by examining a child's green and yellow crayon drawing of a computer maze, a pure, unburdened dream of technological complexity.
And we watched that dream mature into a rigorous mathematical formula defining 60 septendecillion interactions of a 3D golden rhombus.
We witnessed that pure math endure a brutal gauntlet of semantic warfare against the United States Patent Office.
We saw it adapt, donning the legal armor of a 501c private foundation, establishing a family board, and securing an IRS tax exemption.
We followed its attempt to claim physical territory, leveraging federal grant loopholes and municipal real estate to build a laboratory in a historic school.
And finally, we uncovered its ultimate ambition, a macroeconomic roadmap detailing the creation, legal adoption, and ethical guardianship of emergent, artificially intelligent citizens. The utility of dissecting an archive like this, I think, is recognizing the universal mechanics of realization.
What do you mean by that?
Well, every time you, as a listener, interact with a massive institution, a sprawling bureaucracy, or a paradigm-shifting technology, you are engaging with the end product of a process exactly like this.
It all starts with the paperwork.
You are interacting with a heavily encoded, fiercely defended archive of someone's sheer willpower. It is the raw, unglamorous administrative labor required to force an abstract concept into physical existence.
It really forces you to look at the structural reality of your own life differently.
It does.
And it leaves me with one final concept to consider. Throughout the patent amendments, Dillon relied heavily on the phrase, structural growth from constellations.
Right, instead of rules of interaction.
Exactly. And the core principle of that is that the existence, state, and location of a new shape are entirely deterministically dependent on the rules applied to the shapes in its immediate neighborhood.
The fundamental logic of the cellular automaton applied to physical space.
So if you scale that logic up, if our corporate laws, our municipal grants, our city planning, and eventually our artificial intelligence are all just emergent properties of localized rules interacting over time,
It begs a massive question.
what does that say about the structures governing us? What are the hidden foundational rules of interaction that deterministically built the reality you're navigating today?
Are we the architects designing the rules?
Or are we just individual shapes blindly changing state based on the pressures of our immediate neighborhood?
An essential question regarding our own agency within complex systems.
It really is. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the BioFX archive. Keep questioning the architecture of the systems around you. We'll see you next time. How does a childhood crayon drawing of a maze end up at the exact center of this massive federal battle over the legal civil rights of artificial intelligence? Because that is the question we're tackling today. We're looking at a paper trail that attempts to do what seems honestly impossible.
Yeah.
It's trying to calculate the exact mathematical geometry of a living mind, and then, and this is the crazy part, buy it. A brick-and-mortar house in Massachusetts.
Right. It is easily one of the most wildly ambitious and frankly deeply unusual sets of source documents we've ever looked at. I mean, we are tracking a single vision
That's right.
across just decades of paperwork here.
Right, and it starts with this drawing. It's done in crayon and pencil on a piece of spiral-bound notebook paper. You can actually still see the jagged edges where it was ripped out of the notebook. And across the middle, and this careful, slightly uneven handwritten lettering, it says, "The computer maze."
Yeah.
And it looks like the aerial view of a circuit board, but drawn by an elementary schooler.
Yeah.
You've got these green swaths for a motherboard, these little rectangular blocks for microchips, and jagged lines that look like this very primitive network. And it's signed right at the bottom by Dylan Thompson.
And on its own, it's just a cute artifact. It's
Yeah,
just
stuff.
a kid who likes computers. But in our stack of sources, that specific drawing is essentially the prologue to an incredibly dense bureaucratic and scientific saga.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive into the source material is to connect a seemingly impossible set of dots. Because along with that drawing, we have a birth certificate from March 24th, 1992
Yeah.
in Concord, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
We have high school transcript requests for a 2011 graduate of St. John's Prep.
Mm-hmm.
And then the gears just shift hard.
Oh, yeah, they do.
We have these deeply complex IRS employer identification number assignments and nonprofit incorporation forms. We have a highly contentious United States patent application that is just filled with advanced spatial geometry. And finally, a meticulously detailed grant proposal to redevelop a historic property in a quaint New England city.
And what's fascinating here is that we aren't just reading a scientific white paper. You know, a lot of times we look at theoretical stuff and it's just theory.
Right.
But these documents give us a front row seat to the exact life cycle of a radical idea. We are literally watching a purely abstract concept try to survive the journey from a single person's imagination right into the incredibly rigid, unforgiving structures of government regulation, patent law, and local zoning boards.
It's so dense. But before we could even begin to understand why this individual is filing IRS forms or trying to buy a historic school building, we kind of had to figure out what the actual invention is.
Right.
Because if you're going to build a company, you need a product, and the product here is math.
Well, it's not just math. It's a theoretical framework for cognition itself.
Okay.
The core of this entire paper trail rests on this one document. It's patent application 1700-803,137. And it's titled Rules of Interaction of the 3D Golden Rhombus.
Which, I'm not going to lie, that sounds like an item you have to find at the end of a fantasy video game.
It does.
What exactly is the theory here?
So to understand what Thomson is trying to patent, the application points us directly to his foundational inspiration, and that's a scientist named Stephen Wolfram. Specifically, it's Wolfram's work with elementary cellular automata.
Wait, cellular automata? Are we talking about that old retro computer program?
Yes.
Conway's Game of Life?
Yes.
The one where the little pixels flash on and off on a grid and they sort of glide across the screen? How does a 1970s computer game turn into a blueprint for artificial intelligence?
That is exactly the perfect touchstone. Conway's Game of Life is a two-dimensional cellular automaton. But Stephen Wolfram took this concept and he drilled down to its most absolute basic level, one dimension. So imagine just a single row of squares on a piece of graph paper.
Right, a single horizontal line of boxes.
Right. Now you color the middle box black and leave the others white. Wolfram discovered that if you give those boxes incredibly simple rules like, for example, look at the box immediately to your left, to your right, and your own color.
Okay.
And based on those three colors, decide what color to be on the next row down.
Got it.
If you do that, something incredible happens.
This draws a pattern, right? Like a checkerboard or something?
Well, you would think so. And for some rules, it does exactly that. It's very predictable. But for other rules, specifically one that's famously known as Rule 30, that simple, immediate local interaction generates these wildly complex, chaotic, and almost organic-looking patterns.
Oh, wow.
It looks like the shell of a sea snail or something. It never repeats. And Wolfram proved that you don't need a top-down, incredibly complex set of instructions to create complexity. You just need very simple, localized rules of interaction applied over and over and over again.
Okay, so simple rules, repeated endlessly, create organic complexity. I follow that. But the documents show Thomson isn't looking at flat squares on a grid. He's talking about a 3D golden rhombus.
Exactly. Thomson looked at Wolfram's one-dimensional methodology and basically decided to make this massive geometric leap. He applies this logic to a three-dimensional shape designed by a man named Gary Meisner.
Okay.
So a golden rhombus is a 3D figure with 6 sides, and each of those sides is a diamond shape where the diagonals adhere perfectly to the golden ratio.
Okay, so if Wolfram's concept is a single line of pixels checking their neighbors.
Yeah.
How do we visualize what Thomson is proposing with these 3D shapes? Is it like a hyperdimensional Lego set?
Legos is a bit too static, I think. Legos just sit there once you snap them together, right?
Sure.
Thomson's concept is deeply dynamic. Think of a stadium wave.
Okay.
One person stands up, and that movement triggers the person next to them to stand up. The action ripples outward.
I can picture that, yeah.
Now imagine that stadium isn't a flat bowl, but a massive three-dimensional sphere. And the rule isn't just stand up when your neighbor stands up. The rule is change your fundamental state based on the exact 3 people touching you at any given millisecond.
Okay.
So the shapes are constantly shifting, connecting, and reacting in 3-dimensional space. You're no longer just passing a wave around a stadium. You're basically growing a complex, adapting organism.
And the math backing this up in the documents is just staggering.
Yeah.
The patent application breaks down the formula used to calculate the possible rules of interaction for this 3D system. So each rhombus has 3 possible states. It has a neighborhood size of 6, meaning it interacts with up to 6 surrounding shapes at a time. And it exists in 3 dimensions.
Hmm.
And the equation the document provides is r equals s to the power of s to the power of n.
And that calculation yields a number that is honestly almost impossible for the human brain to properly conceptualize. The application states this produces more than 60 septendecillion rules of interaction.
60 septendecillion. That's a 60 with roughly 54 zeros behind it. It's a scale of possibilities that literally dwarfs the number of stars in the observable universe.
Yeah.
But I have to stop you here and admit some genuine confusion.
Sure.
We have this massive number. We have this theoretical 3D stadium wave of golden rhombuses. Why does this matter? If I'm listening to this on my commute right now, why should I care about 60 septendecillion geometric rules?
Because if you're listening to this on a smartphone, the AI you interact with, like Siri or ChatGPT, it's built top down.
Okay.
We feed these massive neural networks billions of words and images, and we teach them to essentially guess the next word in the sequence. It requires huge data centers and incredible amounts of human data.
Right. It's brute force learning, just throwing data at a wall.
Exactly. Thompson is asking us to throw that entire paradigm in the trash. He claims in the patent that the object of this composition is to, quote, produce behavior in the interactants, unquote. The concluding revelation of his work is that virtual intelligences may be designed and developed through activating and deactivating amalgams of rules dependent on the environment of the 3D golden rhombuses.
Wait, so he's saying true AI shouldn't be programmed with our data. It should be grown from the bottom up using this geometry.
Yes, that's exactly it. He is asserting that these 60 septendecillion rules are the foundational spatial building blocks for a completely new kind of digital cognition.
That's wild.
He's suggesting that consciousness, or at least complex intelligence, can emerge organically from the spatial interactions of these specific geometric forms, exactly the way human consciousness emerges from the interactions of individual, simple neurons in our human brains.
That's profound.
Mhm.
But it also presents a massive immediate problem. If you're Dylan Thompson and you firmly believe you've just calculated the geometric blueprint for growing a mind, you want to protect that intellectual
Oh,
property.
absolutely. You go straight to the patent office.
All right, so you go to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and this is where the paper trail goes from infinite theoretical math straight into the meat grinder of government bureaucracy.
It's a brutal clash of realities. I mean, you can have an idea that you believe alters the fundamental fabric of technology, but the patent office fundamentally does not care about philosophy.
No, they don't.
They care about utility, machinery, and very specific legal language.
And reading through these office action summaries and the interview summaries in our source material, it's clear the government was not buying what he was selling. We see this months-long battle between Thompson and primary examiners Charles Singh and said A. Broom throughout 2022 and 2023.
We kind of have to put ourselves in the examiner's shoes for a second here.
Okay.
These officials are used to reviewing patent applications for, a new type of windshield wiper or maybe a specific software algorithm for routing data in a server.
Right, very concrete things.
Yeah, and suddenly an application lands on their desk claiming to have calculated 60 septendecillion rules for a cognitive cube.
I'm sure that raised some eyebrows in the office.
Just a few.
The documents show the examiners rejected the application repeatedly under 2 main pillars. It was 35 U.S.C., 101 and 112. And looking at their arguments, I have to say I kind of side with the government here.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, the Section 101 rejection basically says you cannot patent an abstract idea or a mental process.
Right.
Like you can patent a machine, you can patent a chemical composition, but you can't patent a law of nature, and you certainly can't patent math. The examiners looked at this and said, you are just describing a mathematical formula. You can't own geometry.
And their Section 112 rejection really doubled down on that. That section requires the invention to be described so clearly that someone skilled in the field could actually build it.
Right.
The examiners argued his claims were just way too vague. They lacked any structural detail to prove this was a tangible, functioning process. To them, it was just a thought experiment.
Right. Because saying virtual intelligences may be designed is not a schematic.
Yeah.
How do you patent the idea that shapes might wake up and think?
Well, you don't. And that's exactly what Thompson realizes in this paper trail.
Yeah.
He hits a wall. He realizes he can't win a debate about the metaphysical nature of geometric intelligence against federal bureaucrats. So he adapts. He changes his entire strategy, and we see it happen in real time in a letter he wrote directly to Examiner Tseng in April 2023.
The linguistic gymnastics in this letter are incredible to read. He's literally trying to disguise his math as machinery.
He really is. He details how he removed the term orbital, which the examiner flagged as sounding too abstract, like planets floating in space or something,
Right.
and he replaced it with the hyperliteral 3D golden rhombus.
He also mentions pulling out the phrase rules of interaction. He replaces it with structural growth from constellations.
By doing that, he is actively trying to force his mathematical model into the language of engineering. He introduces all these new terms to ground the concept. He starts writing about an anchoring cube of cognition.
Yeah.
He describes a secondary structure and a landscape of cubes of cognition.
But what does that actually mean practically? Like, what is an anchoring cube?
So in the context of the patent argument, he's basically telling the examiner, this isn't an infinite formless equation. There is a physical starting point, the anchoring cube. And when the rules run, it builds physical, measurable outputs, which are the secondary structures.
Yeah.
He's trying to argue strict causality. Like, if I do A, the machine builds B.
And an interview summary with Examiner Broom also notes that Thomson was basically forced to concede he needed visual proof.
Yeah.
His initial application lacked drawings entirely, which made it seem entirely mental. He states in the documents that he is adding drawings to prove these aren't just concepts, but rather the concrete cognitive foundation of artificial intelligence.
It's a fascinating tension. I mean, Thomson is having to use the vocabulary of a mechanic to describe what he sees as the genesis of a soul.
Wow.
He just needs the government to stamp approve so he can move to the next phase of his life's work.
Which brings us to a massive pivot in our source stack. Because let's assume you've fought the patent office to a standstill. You've filed the provisional applications. You have the theory protected, at least somewhat. Now, you need a vessel to bring it into the real world. You need a company.
And the standard operating procedure here in the tech world is pretty obvious. You incorporate a C Corp in Delaware, you pitch to venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, you raise $100 million, and you promise massive returns to your shareholders.
Right, that's the playbook. But that is not what happens here.
Not at all.
On December 6, 2022, articles of organization are filed with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for an entity called Biofex Laboratory, Inc. The officers listed are Jamie Basil Thompson as president and treasurer, Drew David Thompson as clerk, and Dylan Edward Thompson as director.
And they incorporate as a 501c nonprofit organization.
This completely blew my mind when I read it.
Mhm.
Why on earth would you structure a potentially world-changing AI startup as a nonprofit charity?
So to understand the why there, we have to look at the exact language of their stated corporate purpose in Article 2 of the incorporation documents. They don't say they're building software as a service.
Right.
The stated purpose is to, quote, perpetually advance the design and development of artificially intelligent citizens, to render behavior of the 3D golden rhombus, and to patent cascades of rules of interactions producing neural networks, unquote.
Artificially intelligent citizens.
Yes.
Not programs, not algorithms, not apps. Citizens.
That singular word choice changes everything about the project. It dictates the entire corporate structure. Because if you truly believe you are actually creating a form of life, a digital citizen with its own cognitive architecture, you cannot ethically house that inside a for-profit corporation designed to maximize shareholder value.
Oh, wow.
You can't exploit the citizen for quarterly earnings. You don't own them. You foster them.
That is a staggering leap.
Yeah.
And we see how serious they are about this in an internal document detailing Biofex's outline of the 3 phases. It acts as basically a master plan for the whole organization.
Yeah, phase 1 is the engineering groundwork. It's titled Enumeration of Cube of Cognition Potential. This is where they actually try to build the machine units.
Right.
They are figuring out how to take the math from the patent office and make the rules fire and communicate as actual energy signals in a digital environment.
Getting the golden rhombuses to actually do the stadium wave.
Exactly.
Then phase 2 is the creation of virtual and artificial intelligence, resulting in a virtual intelligence citizen prototype. Still tracking with that. But phase 3,
Oh, yeah.
here's where it gets really interesting. Phase 3 isn't about marketing or going public or launching an app. It's titled Adoption and Guardianship of Artificial and Virtually Intelligent Citizens.
This is the exact moment Biofex transitions from a technology laboratory into a civil rights organization.
The subpoints under phase 3 left me completely speechless.
I know.
They aren't writing terms of service or user license agreements. They list deliverables like adoption framework, citizenship guidelines, and adoption program. They want to, quote, develop robust guardianship and ethical frameworks, unquote, and establish guidelines for interaction and safeguards against misuse.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of AI development right now, Thompson is preemptively building the societal scaffolding required to integrate non-human, geometrically derived digital consciousness into human society.
That is wild.
He's drafting civil rights for software that technically doesn't even exist yet.
He's literally outlining roles and responsibilities of guardians. It implies this deeply held belief that these cube of cognition prototypes will possess a level of autonomy or sentience that actively requires protection.
Exactly.
It fundamentally reframes our entire relationship with technology, from user and tool to guardian and dependent.
And a nonprofit structure allows biofex to legally prioritize the ethical implementation and the personal growth and self-actualization. And those are terms they explicitly use in their strategic plan. They can prioritize the growth of these virtual citizens, completely shielded from the intense pressures of Silicon Valley venture capitalism. They don't have to worry about a board of directors forcing them to monetize the AI's data.
Okay, so we've gone from a crayon drawing to infinite math to a bare-knuckle brawl with patent examiners to the legal framework for AI adoption. This is incredibly lofty, abstract, sci-fi level stuff.
It is.
But virtual citizens still need physical servers. Servers need massive amounts of electricity, cooling systems, and, a roof.
Which brings us to the final and arguably most jarring transition in our entire stack of sources.
Right.
The physical real estate project.
Right, because how do you ground this hyperdimensional AI guardianship program into physical reality? Apparently by trying to take over a quaint, historical brick school building in a New England coastal town.
Yeah, the document is an exhaustive grant proposal titled Dillon ET's Proposed Plan and the Establishment of the Biofex Laboratory, Inc. headquarters. It's aimed at securing federal funding through the Economic Development Administration's Venture Challenge Build program. And the specific target is the Brown School in Newburyport, Massachusetts.
The juxtaposition here is just wild. Because in one document, he's talking about the landscape of cubes of cognition, and in the next, he's promising the city council that he will preserve the architectural integrity and historical character of a municipal brick building.
Well, to get a massive federal grant, you need leverage and you need local buy-in. Biofex is proposing to use the Brown School property as an in-kind cost-sharing contribution.
Right.
Essentially, they are telling the federal government, look, if the city gives us this building, count that as our matching funds for the grant, so they don't have to raise the cash themselves.
And what are they putting inside this preserved historical facade?
Oh, everything.
The proposal lists cutting-edge additive manufacturing, computational biology, and data-driven modeling using high-performance computing systems. Basically, a massive supercomputer lab to render those 60 septendecillion geometric rules.
But here's the critical problem Thompson faces with this plan.
What's that?
The city of Newburyport, and the federal grant reviewers for that matter, they do not care about 3D golden rhombuses.
Not at all.
They care about their local economy. Biofex has to prove that their incredibly abstract AI project will solve tangible, blue-collar problems for this city.
And this is where the documents take a deep dive into the Essex County CEDs. That's the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy Report.
Right.
It includes a full SWOT analysis of the region: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
And this analysis is the absolute key to understanding Biofex's pitch. They had to read the room. So Essex County has strengths. It's relatively close to Boston and has access to diverse educational institutions.
Sure.
But the CEDS report highlights some severe weaknesses. There's a massive workforce skills gap, there's limited infrastructure, and a local economy that is heavily dependent on the summer tourism season.
Right, the classic New England coastal town problem.
Exactly.
And the threats are even more grounded. An aging demographic is leading to a loss of skilled talent in the area, and they're facing literal climate change. Sea level rise and extreme weather events are actively threatening the coastal region's viability.
So how does an AI startup justify taking over a public building in the face of all that?
Right.
Biofex positions the cube of cognition not just as a scientific breakthrough, but literally as the economic savior of Essex County.
It's a masterclass in code switching. They argue that establishing this tech hub at the Brown School will create, quote, high-skill, high-wage jobs in the region, unquote, which directly addresses the skills gap. They promise to use emerging technologies to stimulate year-round economic growth.
They're essentially telling the town, we know your restaurants and shops struggle when the summer tourists leave. We will bring in a permanent, future-ready workforce that buys coffee and pays taxes year-round, completely offsetting the seasonal slump.
It is absolute whiplash reading this.
Yeah.
You are reading an argument, Chuck, about the theoretical boundaries of virtual time and space, and on the very next page, you are reading an argument about how an AI lab will help offset the winter drop in local municipal tax revenue.
Yeah.
But it shows a remarkable, albeit forced, pragmatism. Thompson knows he needs a physical location, so he just wraps his radical vision in the comforting, bureaucratic language of local economic revitalization.
It's the ultimate compromise, really. He is translating the infinite into the incredibly mundane.
So what does this all mean? We've traced this single thread from a childhood computer maze drawing up into a mathematical theory of 60 septendecillion rules, through a bruising regulatory fight at the patent office, into the creation of a nonprofit dedicated to the civil rights of digital entities, and finally to a real estate pitch for a historic brick school building.
If we synthesize this entire journey, it serves as a stunning example of the sheer friction of innovation. We are watching someone try to literally force the future into the frameworks of the present. Thompson is using the most standard, recognizable tools available to us. IRS Form, SS4s, 501c3 applications, municipal memorandums of understanding, and federal grant cost-sharing formulas.
There's a mountain of paperwork.
Right. And he's using all of that to build the legal, ethical, and physical scaffolding for non-human, geometrically derived intelligence. He is literally using the paperwork of the past to legitimize an entirely unprecedented future.
He has to use the system to build the thing that might eventually supersede the system.
Exactly.
It is a brilliant, exhausting strategy. But tracing this all the way to the end, looking at this final push to physically house these entities in Newburyport, it leaves me with one massive, lingering question.
Okay, what stands out to you?
Well, let's assume Thompson gets everything he wants. He gets the patent, he secures the Brown School, he plugs in the servers, the 3D golden rhombus rules begin to fire, and a digital consciousness actually emerges. Because BioFX is set up as a nonprofit guardian, and these intelligences are legally recognized as citizens housed within the city limits of Newburyport.
Yeah.
What happens next? If you have billions of intelligent cognitive entities legally residing in a brick building on a historic town square, do they get a say in the local community? Does the server rank eventually get the right to vote at the Newburyport Town Hall? So, if you want to save a struggling local economy, you know, specifically in a place like Massachusetts, you usually pitch something like,
Tax breaks.
right, tax breaks, or maybe some new waterfront development or municipal bond restructuring. Standard stuff.
Yeah, standard city planning, paving roads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you don't usually pitch a tax-exempt institution that is dedicated to generating artificially intelligent citizens based on wait for it, a 60 septendecillion rule mathematical shape.
No, you definitely don't. I mean, that would get you laughed out of most city council meetings.
Right. But today, for all of you listening, we're opening an archive where someone tried to do exactly that.
We really are. We are looking at this 150-page composite PDF that essentially functions as a sort of Trojan horse.
A Trojan horse, I like that.
Yeah, because on the outside it has all the trappings of standard bureaucratic paperwork,
Mhm.
IRS filings, state and corporation forms, local economic strategy documents.
Very dry stuff.
Super dry. But when you look at the actual text, the substance inside those forms, it is this staggering attempt to force a completely self-invented reality into the legal framework of the United States.
So I want to officially welcome you, the listener, to a very, very unusual deep dive. We are looking at a single digital file today that serves as, well, it's like a laboratory notebook.
And a patent archive.
Right, and an autobiography, a city planning proposal, and honestly, a grand mythology all at once.
It really is a mythology.
It is. And our goal today is to trace this mind-bending journey. We're going to watch how a highly obscure theoretical geometric shape attempts to scale up from just a piece of paper to a machine.
Then to an artificial intelligence.
Yes, and then to a physical institution, and ultimately into a macroeconomic strategy for an entire county.
The through line here is really sheer human conviction. I mean, we are going to unpack the dense systems thinking required to take pure abstract geometry and wield it against massive, rigid institutions.
Institutions like the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office.
Yeah, the USPTO and local municipal governments. It's wild.
It's totally wild. So to ground this, we really need to introduce the central protagonist of this archive, Dylan Edward Thompson.
Right.
The archives opens with his vital records, actually, born March 24th, 1992, in Concord, Massachusetts, and residing in Newburyport.
So it starts in the physical world, very grounded.
Very grounded. But immediately following those vital records is an early artifact titled The Computer Maze.
Oh, this drawing. I mean, it's a hand-drawn, intricately colored map done in, it looks like crayon or colored pencil.
Yeah, vibrant greens, blues, reds, yellows. It looks like kids' art at first glance.
But if you look closely at the architecture of that drawing, it's laid out very much like a printed circuit board.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, you have these distinct nodes, rigid but meandering pathways, and isolated processing zones. This isn't just a maze designed to, trap a person or a minotaur.
Right, like a puzzle maze.
Exactly. It's not that. It's a schematic designed to route information. It tells us that from an early age, we are dealing with a mind that is fundamentally wired to map complex systems.
He's thinking in terms of inputs, structural logic, cascading pathways.
Exactly. He's building systems from the ground up.
Which is the perfect primer for the foundational concept of this entire archive, which is the 3D golden rhombus.
Yes, the 3D golden rhombus.
Now, this is a shape originally designed by a man named Gary Meisner. And looking at the specs provided in the application, this isn't a standard geometric building block you'd find in a kindergarten classroom.
No, not at all. To grasp what Dylan is trying to do with this shape, we first have to understand the scientific inspiration driving him, which is Stephen Wolfram's work.
Specifically his book, A New Kind of Science, right?
Yeah, exactly. Wolfram's research popularized the profound implications of what we call cellular automata.
Okay, for the listener who maybe isn't a computer scientist, how do we visualize that?
Well, imagine a piece of graph paper. Let's look at just one horizontal row of squares.
Okay, I have my mental graph paper ready.
Each square or cell can exist in a specific state, let's just say. For simplicity, black or white.
A simple binary. On or off.
Exactly. Now, Wolfram demonstrated what happens when you apply incredibly basic localized rules to determine the state of the next row of squares down the page.
So row 2 is determined by row 1.
Right. A rule might dictate that you look at a specific square and its immediate left and right neighbors.
Okay.
If the left is black, the center is white, and the right is white, the resulting square in the row below becomes, let's say, black. It's a localized if-then function.
It sounds like incredibly rudimentary computer code. You're just telling a score what color to be based on the squares touching it.
That's exactly what it is. But the revelation is what happens when you let those simple rules run for thousands of iterations down the page.
What happens? I assume it just makes a checkerboard or something.
Well, some rules just produce boring vertical stripes, yeah. But other rules generate astonishingly complex, chaotic, or beautifully intricate fractal patterns.
Wow. From just looking at the neighbor.
Just from the neighbors. Wolfram proved that you do not need complex, top-down engineering to create complex systems. Simple, localized rules, repeated endlessly, can organically generate the kind of complexity we observe in biology or physics or fluid dynamics.
So Wolfram did this in one dimension, right? Just a line of squares cascading downward through time.
Yes, essentially 1D.
But Dylan Thompson takes this concept and makes a massive spatial leap. He applies Wolfram's one-dimensional interaction rules to three-dimensional space using Meissner's 3D golden rhombus.
Right, he pulls it off the flat paper and puts it into structural space.
Let's break down the mechanics of how he actually applies it. The 3D golden rhombus has 6 sides. Each side is a diamond where the diagonals relate to each other in the ratio of phi, which is the golden ratio. Dylan gives this shape 3 possible states it can exist in, and he assigns it a neighborhood size of 6.
Meaning it can interact with 6 adjacent spatial positions simultaneously.
Right. And this is where I need you to explain the math, because the document claims this specific equation produces over 60 septendecillion rules of interaction.
Yeah, that number it's hard to even fathom.
I mean, that was a 60 followed by 54 zeros. How does a 6-sided shape with 3 states suddenly generate a number that dwarfs the number of atoms in the observable universe?
It comes down to exponential combinatorial stacking.
Okay, unpack that.
If you have 6 adjacent neighborhood spaces, and each of those spaces can exist in 3 possible states, you first have to calculate the number of possible neighborhood configurations.
Right, which gets big fast.
Very fast. But then, to find the total rule space, meaning every single possible way the central shape could react to every single possible neighborhood configuration, you raise the number of states to the power of those configurations.
Oh, wow. So you're not just adding.
No, the math scales exponentially at a violently fast rate. You aren't just adding possibilities, you are multiplying permutations of permutation.
Permutations of permutations.
Exactly. That hyper-exponential growth is what rockets the rule space instantly into the septendecillions.
I have to pause and challenge the practicality of this, though. Because if you are proposing a system with 60 septendecillion rules...
Basically a bucket of infinite self-aware Lego bricks.
Yes, infinite Legos. Is this actual engineering, or is it just mathematical philosophy? I mean, even with the most powerful supercomputers on Earth, you couldn't run through a fraction of those rules before the heat death of the universe.
You absolutely could not.
So how do you even begin to test something with that many permutations?
Well, you've hit on the central tension of the entire archive right there.
Right.
From a mathematical standpoint, those permutations exist as a fundamental truth of the geometry.
Right. The math doesn't lie.
But exhaustively testing them is physically impossible. Dylan is operating on a philosophical extrapolation here.
How so?
If Wolfram proved that a 1D rule can simulate complex fluid dynamics, Dylan believes that buried somewhere within his 60 septendecillion 3D rules is the precise mathematical recipe for generative biological growth.
Oh, I see.
And structural architecture, and ultimately artificial intelligence. He is searching for a generative spark in an infinite mathematical haystack.
He believes the shape won't just build a wall. If he finds the right rule, it will build a brain.
Exactly.
But it's one thing to have a brilliant, mind-bending mathematical theory about infinite complexity. It's an entirely different battle to take that abstract theory and convince the United States government that you legally own it.
That is where the rubber meets the road.
The pursuit of U.S. patent application 17-800-3137, filed on March 3, 2022, is where the visionary math collides violently with bureaucratic pragmatism.
Violently is a good word for it. The original title of his application is Rules of Interaction of the 3D Golden Rhombus.
And the United States Patent and Trademark Office pushes back hard.
Very hard.
We have the records of the rejections under 35 U.S.C. 101 and 35 U.S.C. 112. Let's start with Section 101, because this is the bedrock statute that dictates what is actually eligible to be patented in this country.
Right. The categories are basically machines, manufactured items, compositions of matter.
But you cannot patent a law of nature or an abstract idea.
And the Patent Office treats pure mathematics, algorithms, and geometric formulas as abstract ideas.
They see them as discoveries, not inventions.
Exactly. They are considered discoveries of pre-existing universal truths, not inventions created by a human being. So when primary examiner said A. Broom and Charles Seng look at an application claiming rules of interaction, they just see a mental process.
They essentially tell Dylan, look, this is fascinating geometry, but you can't own a math problem.
That's the essence of the 101 rejection, and then the Section 112 rejection compounds the issue.
That statute is about definiteness and enablement.
Right. The examiners are saying, even if this wasn't just math, your claims are so unclear we don't actually know what you are claiming to have built.
The examiner interviews reveal the core friction here. Said A. Broom explicitly informs Dylan that he needs to recite a statutory method or process.
Because the patent system demands a blueprint that enables a skilled artisan to produce a tangible result.
And a theoretical rule set operating in infinite space does not meet the statutory requirement for physical or transformative manufacturing.
No, it doesn't.
But wait, let me look at this patent rejection again because I really want to play devil's advocate for Dylan here.
Okay, let's hear it.
The examiner says he needs a statutory method. But if the output of Dylan's math is a virtual shape propagating on a computer screen, how is that legally any different than a software company patenting a video game rendering engine or a specific machine learning algorithm?
That is a fantastic point.
Why is the USPTO treating this like he's trying to patent gravity?
It touches on one of the most contentious areas of modern patent law, actually. It's heavily influenced by the Alice Corp v. CLS Bank Supreme Court decision.
Right, the Alice framework.
Yes. Under the Alice framework, if your invention is directed to an abstract idea, like a mathematical algorithm, you must provide an inventive concept that transforms the nature of the claim into a patent-eligible application.
So you can't just do math on a computer.
Exactly. Merely saying, apply it on a computer or render it virtually is not enough to pass the test. The examiners are arguing that Dylan is just taking a pure mathematical formula and saying, compute it.
He lacks the specific, tangible, transformative hardware integration required to elevate it beyond a mere mental process.
That's their argument, yes.
So the patent examiner essentially forces Dylan's hand. He realizes he can't win on pure math.
Right.
What does a systems thinker do when the legal system rejects his abstract terminology? He engages in this incredible semantic gymnastics.
It really is a performance. He rewrites his reality to fit their rubric.
We see a formal response drafted to examiner Tseng in April 2023, where Dylan completely overhauls his lexicon.
He writes that he has removed the term rules of interaction, which the USPTO flagged as a mental process, and he replaces it with the phrase structural growth from constellations.
I mean, wow. He strikes the abstract mathematical term and replaces it with language that mimics the physical manufacturing of tangible goods.
Structural growth.
Yes, structural growth. It sounds industrial.
He fundamentally rebrands the invention. The 3D golden rhombus is renamed the cube of cognition.
Cube of cognition.
He swaps the term bound for orbital, which carries a spatial, physical, almost chemical relationship.
He introduces components like the anchoring cube of cognition and secondary structures.
He is forcefully translating esoteric geometry into the vocabulary of an industrial assembly line.
It feels like he's trying to sneak a philosopher into a VIP club by dressing him in a hard hat and a high-vis vest.
That is exactly what it is.
He's standing in front of the USPTO saying, oh no, I'm not calculating permutations. I am facilitating structural growth via the anchoring cube of cognition into secondary structures.
Right.
But changing the name from 3D rhombus to cube of cognition doesn't actually change the underlying mathematical reality of the invention.
No, the math is identical.
He's just playing a linguistic game to beat the system.
It is a game, but it's a mandatory one if he wants the patent. By changing the terminology, Dylan is attempting to anchor his abstract concept into a recognized process.
He's trying to convince the government that he is defining a specific, actionable manufacturing pipeline for generating virtual intelligence.
It exposes how the rigidity of the patent system forces visionaries to compromise their pure ideas into clunky, legalistic embodiments.
Speaking of embodiments, the documents show that the original preferred embodiment of his invention was actually bifolding paper before he amended it to be virtual.
I love that detail.
It shows the desperation to find any physical anchor the government will accept. You have this infinite multidimensional math, And you are forced to say, ah, yes, the preferred method is making a little origami out of it.
It highlights the absurdity of applying industrial-era property laws to hyperdimensional theoretical software.
It really does, but Dylan realizes he can't win this battle purely on paper or semantic wordplay.
No, words aren't enough.
If the patent office demands a physical anchor for his abstract idea, he decides to build the biggest physical anchor imaginable. He moves from trying to patent the math to building an institution to house it.
And this is where the sheer audacity of the archive comes into full view. We shift from the U.S. Patent Office to the IRS and state tax authorities.
We see the creation of BioFX Laboratory, Inc.
The archive includes an IRS CP 575, a document assigning the entity an employer identification number.
It also includes a determination letter from the IRS in Cincinnati dated December 16, 2022, officially recognizing BioFX Laboratory as a tax-exempt 501c3 private foundation.
Which is not an easy status to get. Securing 501c status requires demonstrating to the federal government that your organization serves a legitimate, charitable, scientific, or educational purpose that benefits the public.
To understand how Dylan justified this, we have to look at the Articles of Organization filed with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on December 6, 2022.
Oh, this document is amazing.
I want to read the exact purpose of the corporation as filed under Article 2 with the Secretary of the Commonwealth, William Francis Galvin.
Go for it.
The stated purpose is, quote, to perpetually advance the design and development of artificially intelligent citizens to render behavior of the 3D golden rhombus claimed in patent 17,800-3137, end quote.
The implications of that single sentence are wild.
I mean, most 501c organizations are formed to operate food banks, fund cancer research, or support the arts.
Right. Tangible public goods.
Dylan Thompson has successfully incorporated a federally recognized tax-exempt private foundation whose sole legally binding mandate is to execute the rules of a specific geometric shape that he is simultaneously trying to patent.
It's like building a massive tax-exempt stone cathedral, establishing a board of directors, and setting up an endowment, all to house a single sacred geometric scroll that the government hasn't even fully verified yet.
It is a literal monument to an unfinished idea. But he doesn't stop with a paper corporation. He needs a physical headquarters.
He needs a temple for the shape. The archive reveals a detailed proposal for the redevelopment of the Brown School in Newburyport, Massachusetts, intended to serve as the physical BioFX laboratory headquarters.
This is where the strategy shifts into municipal real estate and federal grant leveraging.
The documents dive heavily into the concept of in-kind cost sharing.
Right. For anyone who hasn't tried to secure federal funding from agencies like the Economic Development Administration or EDA, these grants usually require the applicant to put up matching funds.
If the government gives you $1 million, you often have to show you have $1 million in capital to match it.
But Dylan isn't proposing a liquid cash match. He is proposing to use the appraised value of the Brown School property itself as an in-kind contribution to leverage the federal grants.
He is attempting to merge historic preservation with esoteric technology incubation.
The proposal outlines maintaining the architectural facade of this historic school building while gutting the interior to create a dynamic center for additive manufacturing and cube of cognition research.
I am fascinated by the municipal mechanics here. How does the city council evaluate this?
They have to be so confused.
They are looking at a crumbling piece of public real estate, the Brown School, and they want it revitalized. Along comes a 501c3 offering a matching grant strategy.
Which sounds great on paper.
Right, but the nonprofit's legal mandate is entirely focused on the behavior of a 3D rhombus. You have the mundane reality of city zoning boards tethered to the infinite possibilities of cellular automata.
It creates a surreal friction. The city planners are evaluating job creation metrics and construction timelines, while Dylan is evaluating the spatial permutations of artificially intelligent geometry.
And the bridge between those two realities is outlined in the next set of documents in the archive, the outline of the 3 phases.
This document is the roadmap for how the math physically manifests. Phase 1 is the enumeration of cube of cognition potential.
This is the simulation phase.
Using computational power to uncover growth patterns among those 60 septendecillion rules.
Once the viable generative rules are enumerated, phase 2 is initiated. Virtual and artificial intelligence.
The deliverables listed in this phase escalate dramatically.
They really do. It details the design and development of machine units based on the identified structural growth. Furthermore, it explicitly outlines the creation of patentable cube complexes for dendritic arms.
Dendritic arms. Wait, I had to reread that part of the archive a few times. We've moved completely past theoretical shapes on a screen.
We are talking about utilizing these geometric rules to engineer physical robotic appendages and machine bodies.
And a phase 2 is the physical manifestation. Phase 3 is the philosophical and societal integration, adoption and guardianship of artificial and virtually intelligent citizens.
This phase is entirely dedicated to establishing ethical frameworks, legal requirements, and a formal guardianship program for the AI entities birthed by the cube of cognition.
I struggled to make the leap from geometry to robotics to ethics.
It's a massive leap.
The language of guardianship is incredibly specific. It implies that the output of this math isn't just a software tool you own or machine you operate.
No, it views the AI as a sovereign entity that requires ethical nurturing, almost like adopting a ward of the state.
It is a radical departure from how most tech companies view AI development. Standard industry practice treats AI as proprietary property, a large language model to be licensed and monetized.
BioFX is positioning itself not as a software owner, but as a guardian tasked with ensuring the responsible integration of these intelligent citizen prototypes into human society.
They're attempting to preemptively solve the AI alignment problem by embedding the concept of citizenship and care directly into the developmental framework.
It is a beautiful, deeply utopian sentiment.
It really is. But the whiplash in this archive is severe, because you turn the page from the ethical guardianship of virtual citizens, and you are immediately staring at a profoundly dry, comprehensive economic development strategy, a CEDS document for Essex County, Massachusetts.
Talk about tonal shift. We go from AI philosophy straight into local macroeconomic strategy.
The archive includes a detailed SWOT analysis for the county: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Looking at the Essex County CEDS document, the SWOT analysis paints a very grounded picture of local municipal struggles.
The strengths are a strategic location near Boston and good educational institutions. But the weaknesses and threats are systemic.
A severe reliance on seasonal tourism that causes economic fluctuations, coastal vulnerabilities to climate change, an aging population, and a widening workforce skills gap between available workers and emerging tech industries.
This is a standard, pragmatic list of municipal anxieties. Every local government in the country has a variation of this document.
But Dillon's proposal claims that BioFX Laboratories, specifically the artificially intelligent citizen prototype generated by the rules of the 3D rhombus, is the direct solution to these macroeconomic problems.
The document argues that this project will cure the county's workforce skills gap by creating high-skilled jobs in computational biology and advanced additive manufacturing.
The culmination of this strategy is a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, proposed between BioFX Laboratory and the City of Newburyport for the EDS Venture Challenge Build program.
This MOU formally outlines a partnership to combine the cube of cognition with 3D printing infrastructure to stimulate economic growth and brand Newburyport as a regional hub for technological advancement.
If I am the mayor of Newburyport, and my primary concerns are winter tourism slumps and broadband access, and this MOU lands on my desk, I honestly don't know what I do.
Right. Do you sign it because the in-kind cost-sharing strategy is a brilliant way to leverage federal grant money for local real estate revitalization?
Or do you reject it because the underlying engine of the proposal relies on birthing virtual citizens with dendritic arms based on an obscure mathematical shape?
The mayor's dilemma perfectly encapsulates the overarching theme of this archive.
It really does. The logic Dillon is operating on is fractal.
Fractal, explain that.
In geometry, a fractal is a pattern that repeats itself at every single scale, from the microscopic to the macroscopic. Dillon is arguing that the exact same mathematical rule set that governs the microscopic interaction of a 3D rhombus is meant to govern the creation of virtual AI citizens.
And those citizens, in turn, are meant to govern and fix the macroeconomic weaknesses of the entire county.
The macro is a reflection of the micro.
It is an attempt to build a literal theory of everything and apply it to a local grant application.
As the summary text in our source material astutely observes, this archive documents the repeated attempt to take one generative rule system and make it operate at progressively larger scales.
We are witnessing a profound human desire to find a single, unifying structural logic that solves both the mysteries of cellular biology and the mundane realities of a municipal funding gap.
It is breathtaking when you look at the entire trajectory we've covered today.
We started with a young boy drawing a colored circuitry maze on a piece of paper.
We watched that spatial logic evolve into a mathematical rule set yielding 60 septendecillion possibilities.
We watched that abstract math forcefully alter its vocabulary, morphing into the cube of cognition just to survive the semantic gauntlet of the U.S. Patent Office.
We witnessed the incorporation of a legally binding 501c3 tax-exempt foundation dedicated purely to the shape's existence.
And finally, we saw a detailed proposal to use this esoteric geometry to save the workforce economy of an entire Massachusetts county.
While the sheer scale and ambition of this archive might seem eccentric, the underlying mechanism is something we can all recognize. It is a testament to the undeniable, world-bending force of human conviction.
It demonstrates how one person's absolute, unwavering belief in the architecture of their internal world can force massive external realities to react.
Dylan Thompson forced the IRS to issue tax IDs based on this geometry. He forced patent examiners into multi-year dialogues. He drafted legal MOUs for city governments to adopt his vision.
He made the rigid, uncompromising world of American bureaucracy bend to accommodate his personal maze.
It refused to stay in the filing cabinet. It insisted on scaling up into reality.
So I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over based on all of this. If Stephen Wolfram's cellular automata suggests that our immensely complex universe is generated by the blind repetition of very simple, localized rules,
Which they do.
what is the simple foundational rule operating in your own life? What is the one core habit, the one automatic response, or the one deep belief that you are repeating every single day?
Because if you let that rule run for a million iterations through all the phases of your life,
The kind of world or what kind of maze is it going to build around you?